Jim of Shiloh Kahal. I want to address something that I've been dealing with for a long time. That is this question of is Satan truly the God of this world? And if he is the God of this world, what does that mean? What does it literally mean and truly mean in our day-to-day life? Well, I became a Christian in the 1980s, and immediately I became interested in things of eschatology, which led me to topics such as the Bilderbergers and the Trilateral Commission and a few other things. And this concept that the rich and the powerful and the elite of this world were buying up all the newspapers, because that's what we had for our news back then. So they were buying up everything so that they could control the messaging to people. I understood this from the 1980s. And I knew, studying eschatology, that that was going to have to happen, because how else are you going to get it to a point where one man can control the whole world, the messaging, and become the power broker of the world? I mean, it just all made sense to me that it was going to have to be centralized. I remember in 2000 when, it was all, the world was going to come to an end because of the changeover from 1999 to 2000. So it was the year 2000, Y2K. And we all prepared and did different things because we thought maybe this was the time, and it wasn't, for obvious reasons. In 2020, I prepared again because I wasn't sure that in our country and maybe around the world we weren't going to see a collapse of all the economies, because how do you have so much debt and just so many things that are happening? Well, I was being political. I haven't always been political, but I was political from, you know, probably 2008 forward, maybe actually probably 2000 forward. Um, I'm sure I was political and started getting political, but not really political. I remember getting pretty adamantly political when we had in 2016, and we had Ted Cruz running against Donald Trump, and I was adamantly for Ted Cruz because it was my understanding he was a believer. And as a believer, I wanted a believer in the presidency of the United States if we could. Through all of that, watching that, it was kind of discouraging to, the level of believing the leaders that we were looking for to become our leader would probably not have met the level of believing that we need from our true leaders in the church and such. But certainly Donald Trump didn't seem to be somebody who would trumpet and be a rallying cry for things we were interested in, righteous things like stopping the killing of babies and just other things that have to do with righteous behavior. So it was very disappointing when Ted Cruz lost to Donald Trump. But then we went through that period of time. Well, okay, so Trump actually turned out to feed our wants pretty well. He at least he spoke a good story, and so he ended up making most of us, you know, champion him for our Republican cause again, so that we could get more things done in 2020. Again, waxing political. So then we watch as he's going up against Biden and winning in the middle of the night, and then winning in the early part of the night, and then in the middle of the night, everything shuts down, and suddenly we wake up and Biden has won. I mean, and then you start watching all the evidence, and you begin to realize just, whoa, something's very wrong here. I mean, we've always thought that the Democrats, I mean, because we were Republicans, right? And the Democrats were the bad guys, I guess. And they would cheat. We expected them to cheat, but the cheating took place on levels and scales that was hard to imagine. And it just seemed like the Republicans could have stepped in, law enforcement, people could have stepped in and stopped what was happening, but it didn't happen. And it looked like the Republicans were complicit. I became very discouraged in all of that, to the point where I also, it was very depressing for me, but it also caused me to shake awake and begin to really start paying attention to what's happening, because I'm realizing that something's bigger than the Republicans and the Democrats. This idea, that we had a good guy and a bad guy, or a right and a left. Suddenly I'm thinking, well, maybe we really don't have either one. Neither of them represent what I'm after and what I'm hoping to take place. So it led me off into other channels of information that I didn't know existed prior to that. I had been busy. I had been busy with life and following the major news channels like Fox and other things who were supposed to be championing my cause, and ignoring all of that. I didn't know what Q was. I didn't know what all that stuff was. So all of that was I did crash study. I spent thousands of hours. Maybe it's an exaggeration for 1,000 hours, but I don't think so. I mean, I have many, many, many hours now involved in topics all over the board, topics I didn't even know existed, let alone have enough information on them to begin understanding them or weighing in on them. But those events led me in that direction. Um, I held out for a while that we would see, a removal of what took place in 2020. And when it didn't happen, I'm not really going to go into it because that's not the point. But what it really led me to was broadened studies of everything. And I've always kind of thought that there were elites, but I didn't really understand it. Now, see if I can just be as quick, and because the point of this video, I really want to keep this video short. But let me just say that there was the creation that took place 6,000 years ago. We had a perfect man created, but within 6 or 7 years, he sinned. He did not obey the command and ended up falling. And we had sin enter the human race. And then we had, almost immediately, we had Cain slaying Abel. And so we have the proliferation of sin. And then we have the Watchers come. And I never knew this before, but really there is information about this pre-Diluvian period, this period before the flood. And there's lots of information beyond the book of 66 that would help you understand what took place in those days. And it was fantastical. It is the information that goes into our fantasy stories, of the giants and the cyclops and the gods and different things. There are reasons why we have these stories and these understandings. It's because it appears to have happened. We had giants in the land. We had Nephilim. We had mixing of DNA. So we just had strange creatures before, all of which got destroyed, except for apparently the seafaring creatures and Noah and his family. And then we started all over again. And I think, I'm not going to try to be exact here, it was around 1650 that the flood occurred. So after about 1,650 years, it was all destroyed. And much had come to play. I think it likely that a lot of what we see under the water and different things that are fantastic constructions and things that we just can't imagine how it ever got here. So we start thinking in terms of, crazy outer space, people from other worlds coming. But it probably all existed in this culture and in this civilization that was probably technologically advanced, maybe not in electronics like what we do, but advanced in other ways that could create and build things with larger people, larger workers, do some fantastical things. Well, then we have it all destroyed. Not entirely. We see the remnants of it underwater and in different places. But the people and the living creatures on the earth were destroyed, except for those in the ark and Noah. And then they come out, and everybody knows the stories of the Tower of Babel and Nimrod and how that came to be about. But I don't think people really realize, I never did, that this happened within a couple hundred years. First of all, that seems like across thousands of years, it seems like a short time, I guess. But if you go back 200 years to, say, 1825, now that's a long time ago. A lot of things could happen in 1825. Massive differences in population, differences in everything. And So 200 years is a long enough time. But within 200 years, you begin to read extra writings or scriptures that have been hidden from us, like Jubilees. You realize within a few hundred years, some information that Satan, our adversary, made his way into the people, into the sons of Noah right away, within a couple hundred years. And that's how we end up with the Tower of Babel and Nimrod, who was probably also a Nephilim as well. Although I don't really want to weigh in, it doesn't really matter. He consolidated. He ended up becoming the first world leader of sorts for the known land at the time, as they were repopulating the earth. He was the consolidator of kings and kingdoms and became the first national leader, world leader, whatever you want to call it, and began to consolidate things under himself, including the Tower of Babel, when they were all of one language. And then to thwart their efforts, then Yahweh comes down and confuses their languages and spreads them out across the world. Okay, but this was only 200 or 300 years after after the flood. Now, I will also contend when we start getting into Revelation, Revelation 17, where we're talking about the whore of Babylon, the whore, the harlot, the mother, mystery Babylon, the mother of harlots, riding the beast, and then the city of Babylon. I really think that when you get into the descriptions and you see that the city of Babylon is the harlot, they are one and the same, and that they were sovereign over the sovereigns of the world. I really think that this is the beginning. This is the mystery Babylon we're after. It goes clear back to these guys and this, and the religious systems, the political systems, the economic systems. I think that the elites, probably the elites at the very top of the pinnacle, the ones you'll never know names. If you know their names, you do not know the top of the hierarchy of power in Satan's world and kingdom. And I think these guys who are really going to be close to Satan's, leadership originate back there. I mean, they've got the wealth and the money that come from thousands and thousands and thousands, 6,000 years of accumulating money and religion and people and influence and power, all with the assistance of Satan and etc. So I think, but my point is that when I began to study all of this and when I start going back, I begin to realize how prevalent is this whole idea of Satan being the God of this world. When things happened in 2020 and I began to look, I start looking around at everything. Everything seems to be under the influence of an elitist, an elite group of people who have all the power and all the money. So we have, it's been a while since I've studied it, so I'm butchering the names, but State Street, Vanguard, and there's another one. 3 entities pretty much own the entire world. You're watching, we're observing that all commerce, everything is really being centralized. They're all going off to Amazon. They're all going off to Walmart. We don't have mom and pops anymore. Our ability to eat and buy and do is being consolidated into these buying groups and this centralized commerce. But they're now also controlling all of our education, all of our entertainment, all of our news, all of our sports. Everywhere we turn, we have the influence and the messaging going forth of Satan. There was this led me to, as I was studying all this, led me to a book from Lyndon LaRue from years ago. Let me see if I can find it here. See what it was called. It was called The Secrets Known Only to the Inner Elites. Let me see if I can open it real quick and just see if... it doesn't really matter because this is Lyndon LaRue, and this is in the 1970s where he's going back and he's studying in the days of Plato, in the days of Socrates, which are the days just before Alexander. So you're going back not 6,000 years, or I'm sorry, not 4,000 years. If I said 6,000 earlier, I meant 4,000 since the flood. But he's going back more than 2,000 years, 2,400 years or so, because he's going back to the times of Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, and watching and this is in the days prior to the rise of Alexander of Greece, who then went through the world and conquered conquered the Persians, who conquered the Babylonians, who conquered the Assyrians. So we're going back that far. And in that writing, he's talking about how the elites, those who are really in power, they've known for a long time that to control the masses, they have to control the messaging, which he called myths, which would be the stories, which we always think of when we hear myths now. We think, the Greek gods and different things, all these myths that would go into. But really, myths, according to LaRouche, are just really the stories of the populace. And the stories of the populace do not just come from fables and just stories they're out there telling. It's the news organizations. It's the messaging coming out from the leaders telling everybody what's happening in the world. And that's what's happening to us today. This was happening clear back in the days prior to Alexander. but it's never not happened. It's always happened. We call what did we call it in World War II? We called what the propaganda. So back then it was called propaganda, but what it is it's just sending out messaging to the masses, giving them information that caused them to act and respond and perceive. And that's been going on throughout this entire world. And what has seemingly taken place now, and again, I know this will be getting off into conspiracy theories, but let me just, before I even go where I'm getting ready to go, how much do you really believe the scriptures? Because if you really believe the scriptures, you now have to really, if you're really going to believe them, you're going to have to believe the whole story. You have to believe everything that happened to Israel. And you have to really now start learning what is not just did happen to Israel, but what is happening to Israel and what's going to happen to Israel, because it turns out that we as the church are Israel. If you're not, we're Gentile. We might be Gentiles, but we're part of Israel now. We've joined Israel. That's why we get in Ephesians, we get the writings of Paul saying we've now joined the commonwealth of Israel, because that's what we're dealing with. So we need to understand what has taken place. So I don't, again, in the interest of trying to keep this short, I really don't intend to back up everything that I'm going to say here. Maybe a few things at the end that I want to quickly discuss. But here are some things that I think you need to understand, or that if you wish to really begin to try to step back and evaluate, you're going to need to understand that Satan's methodology, first of all, he's the great deceiver. He does what he does, not through brute force, although some of it's brute force, but he does the majority of what he does through deception, leading the world astray by bad information. So he's always infiltrated every move. He infiltrated quickly after they got off the boat, after Noah and his sons got off the boat, he infiltrated into their systems. He infiltrated into Israel once Israel became a nation years later, after Moses led them out of Egypt. Actually, he had infiltrated Israel even before, while they were still in Egypt. And even after Messiah, he immediately, as it was predicted in the new writings, he, Satan, our adversary, immediately began infiltrating the church and leading those ravenous wolves among the sheep, leading us astray. Today, we all think that the doctrines of demons are going to be introduced to us at the end of time by Satan, and that they're going to be undoing these sound doctrines that we have when they appear on the scene and begin introducing doctrines of demons, which the church is going to teach you. Is there's a lot of information going on. People are learning through various sources because writings are becoming available to us, information is becoming available to us. We're becoming more aware of where the church fits in everything, how we fit into the writings of the Gospels, and then the writings of the emissaries, the apostles in the early days, and why. You got to understand just how Israeli, that is, how much of Israel and how much of the Torah of Moshe was still involved. Only through the writings and through the church do we begin undoing those the ways of Elohim that are presented to Elohim's people via Israel, that Yahushua, Jesus himself, affirmed, and that Paul ultimately, when you realize that he is not undoing that, he's affirming that, he's undoing other things that had stepped in and were part of the infiltration of Satan. He was, Yahushua and John the Baptist and Paul were fighting against the infiltration and the misinformation, the bad doctrines that were being given to people in those days. And then we have Yahushua coming on the scene, and then we have sound doctrine from him, and then from his his immediate apostles, and maybe the very early people. But almost immediately, you can start reading the writings. Within 100 years, we're already getting bad information where they start undoing things. Who really authorized undoing the Sabbath? Nobody of the church. So really, you could go back farther, but you could certainly go back to Constantine and the founding of the Catholic Church and the various councils they had. And the famous one is the Council of Nicaea, where they eliminated all the other books through those church fathers, which would not be the apostles, but the church fathers that were given that credence by the church, the leaders, to give them authority and an air of importance. Well, they began to hide they, along with the Pharisees, who were anti-Messiah, and the Pharisees were just a sect of the Yehudim. It's a sect. It's not all of the Yehudim. It's only this grouping of people that we've come to know as Jews. I mean, now it's the Jews and the Pharisees are interrelated. We can't really even talk about the Jew. We're talking about the Pharisees when we're talking about today's Jews, but really the true Jews of today are the Yehudim. And all of Israel is Yehuda, Benjamin, all of the 12 tribes. And so none of that's happened yet, but that's not the topic of this. It's not what I mean to get into here. But what I am saying is that the doctrines of demons were introduced to the church more than 18, 19, 100 years ago. And the church has been living in those doctrines of demons because they do not originate from the scriptures that Paul turned us to. The scriptures I'm not saying that we don't want to listen to and abide and follow the writings of Paul and James and John and Peter and, of course, Yahushua. They should be treated as scripture. We should take them very seriously. But the scripture they're all talking about all predated their writings. It's the scriptures that we now call the Old Testament, which I call the old writings. That's where you find all your information. And if we are practicing things that are not found there, if we're practicing things that are not found by Yahushua, what are we doing? We're practicing doctrines of demons. Church leadership has the church, and don't get me wrong, I don't blame all the church leadership, because the church leadership are what? They're people who have become believers because we're all brought to Jesus or Yahushua, and we're brought to him, and those who really want to lead and become part of it, they go off and they learn. So where did they go off and learn to? They go off to the seminaries and the teaching institutions that are now controlled by who? Satan. And the messaging and the teaching and the curriculum and the books and the doctrines that they are teaching people as though it is the ways of Yahweh, they're not from scriptures. They're from their own doctrines. So they are teaching people their doctrines. Well, I'm not standing against those who are learning those doctrines and then trying to teach it. They are just doing what they think they need to do. But the doctrines they're teaching, they did not get from scripture. They're getting it from this church. And the doctrines they're teaching are the doctrines of demons that Paul was talking about. It didn't take 2,000 years for those doctrines of demons to be introduced. It took 300 years, 200 years for those doctrines to be introduced to the church. And it's been influencing the church ever since. That's why the church is so impotent. We've had so many problems with the church because the church isn't following Yahuwah. The church isn't following Yahushua. The church is following the church, and that's a problem. So this is not supposed to be a video about the church. It's another whole topic. But what I am saying is that Satan is the god of this world. Satan is the great deceiver. Satan is our adversary. Satan is the one who has led the whole world astray. And if you are going to be a real solid believer, you are going to, when you read Yahushua and John and Paul, and then John later in Revelation, you know that the god of this world is Satan. And what does that mean? That the deceiver, if he's really powerful, which he is, he's very powerful, and he's got all the money, he's got all of it. We think World War II happened and we had good guys against bad guys. No, Satan was atop both of that, playing both sides. It's all big. It's all like the Matrix, pretty much. I mean, things are playing out that we have been led to believe certain things, and we just can't know. Point is that Satan is the great deceiver, and he is doing all this by deception. There are many things that are being challenged today. The narrative of World War II. The validity of the doctrines of the church to be true doctrines of Yahuwah, the cosmology of the earth. I don't want to get into all of these. I don't want to get into, I could, because I've studied them now. I have gone through it, and we can get into the idea of whether the earth is round or flat. We can get into it all. But what I'm really saying is that if you are a true believer, you need to take Satan seriously. And you need to take the fact that he is the great deceiver leading the entire world astray, and that part of his deception could be the cosmology of the earth. And people will say, why? Well, because it leads people away from the scriptures, away from things. Again, I'm not trying to argue for any of these various topics that cause people to get excited and to react and then not really respond truthfully or faithfully. I mean, what I challenge people to do, what I'm really and this whole purpose of this video is, listen, if you are serious about the things of Elohim, or in our world, in more common words, the things of God, if you're serious about the things of God, if you're serious about the things of Jesus, then you need to take what they say serious, in that you have an adversary. You have Satan, the Satan. You have the devil. You have the Lucifer. You have Azazel. You have an enemy, and that enemy is in control of the world you live in, and he's in control of the messaging. You think that NASA, as a political arm for Satan, NASA cannot produce messaging and information that could lead the world astray, that our educational systems could teach us about history of the world, and that the church could teach us about an entirely different set of doctrines that came about after. You think that's beyond what Satan can do? Then you misunderstand what scriptures have forewarned us about. If you do not back up, and this would be my my warning to my advice to you, is that I'm not asking you to believe what I'm saying. What I am suggesting that you do is think about this for a minute and take everything. I'm not saying thrust everything you've understood and learned away from you. That'd be a fool. You don't want to be a reed blown about by every wind of doctrine, and I'm not asking you to. But what I am saying is, you need to be able to put what you have learned, the doctrines that you have learned, the teachings you have learned, and you need to put them up here and test them all and really see if they can stand up, not to the teaching of the church, because if you turn to the standard teachings of the church, they're going to turn you right back to these doctrines. I did this on the concept of whether the law had been dealt with and whether we really needed to be walking in the law. 20 years ago, when this was first introduced to me, I went back to the teachings of the church, and the teachings of the church said, that's dumb. Look at Galatians, look at this, and gave me the interpretations of Galatians and Acts that I just embraced, and then I moved on. Now I understand that those teachings from the church are not holding up in light of the large teaching of Scripture behind. When you really start studying Scriptures, you're going to see what all these things. What I'm really trying to say is that put everything that you understand up there. Don't throw it away, but don't hold it as though it's got to be held on to, because there are too many teachings of the church that are errant. It'd be topic after topic that we could do this on, and that's not the point of this. What I'm really trying to say is, if you believe scriptures, then you must understand that the devil is the god of this world. Satan is the god of this world. It is Satan who controls this world. This world is not the one that's coming. That's why Yahushua says, if my reign was of this world, my folk, my guys would come and take care of business, but my reign is not of this world. So we need to distinguish between this world and the world to come, and that eventually this world will become the reign and under the power and kingdom of the reign of Yahushua, but it's not today. It still is under the power and influence of Satan, and it will be. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look around and see the influences of Satan rather than the influences of Yahushua or Jesus or Yahuwah or Elohim on the world. The world is following the ways of evil and unrighteousness and not righteousness. Before I leave here, because I'm done, you get the idea. I want to just do a quick study on just a couple quick things to study what this means to the scriptures that both give us the name of our adversary and the concept that he is the ruling entity of this world. So I'll be right back. Okay, so let me just start with one of the more common ones, the idea that Satan is the god of this world. Well, you turn to 2 Corinthians 4:4. How does the NIV read on this? The God of the age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. The New Living Translation says, Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe English Standard says, in their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. Berean Standard says the God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers. Berean Literal says, in whom the God of this age has blinded the minds of the unbelieving. King James says, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not. So clearly in 2 Corinthians 4:4, we have this concept that the God of this age, which the New Living Translation says is Satan, but elsewhere you get other references that let you know that the God of this age is Satan. Let me move on to the next. Okay, so here's Yahushua, or Jesus' words, and I pulled out the the KJV for this, KJV, the King James version for this, rather than the Hallelujah scriptures or the Yah scriptures that I normally go to. But let's move here to this is John 12, verse 31. It says, "Now is the judgment of this world. Now shall the prince of this world be cast out." So we know that the prince of this world is who he's getting ready to cast out. We understand that to be Satan. Let me go to 14:30. Let's get there real quick. 14:30. Hereafter I will not talk much, for the prince of this world cometh and hath nothing in me. And 16:11, of judgment, because the prince of this world is judged. There are other versions for that, but let me, they all pretty much say something like this: the God of this world. Let me go on to Revelation, and let me just give me a second to get there. And I want verse 12:9, which I think everybody kind of knows. Let me get there. 12:9 is, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So Satan, our adversary, is the one who deceiveth the whole world and cast us out. And again, we have Corinthians 4:4, 2 Corinthians 4:4, naming him as the God of this world. Okay, so I just did a quick look at Satan, just to address the on Satan, the word Satan, which I'll show you here in a second. It just means adversary primarily. Most of the versions I have found are introducing, when we get into the Greek, it's introducing ho Satanas or something of that nature, which is the Satanas. Occasionally, we do get just Satan without a qualifier like a the or then, but even then it just would be like away from me, Satan, away from me, adversary. So he's referring to this being as the adversary. So Satan is all about the adversary. Let me go to let's see, we'll just go to Romans 16:20 and see what it says here. We'll go to the Greek, where it says, the God of peace will soon crush Satan. Let's go see. So the God of peace will soon crush, oops, did I miss it? Okay. Ton Satan. So here is Satan, Satanan, which is the adversary, and then figuratively the accuser. And then they do throw in Strong's Satan as a name, the devil, because they're capitalizing it, but primarily it's the adversary. And let me go back here, and we see that we have the word Satanan, and they've capitalized it here. But ton, what is ton? That is ho, he, to, and it's the. So most of what I have seen is going to be that. If I can find another one here real quick. I think I just did that one. Let's try 1 Corinthians over to Satan for the destruction. Let's see what the Greek says there. To Satana, to Satana. So it's also the word for the, and then back is the Satan. So even though they're saying turn it over to Satan and treating it as a first name, Satan is not his name. It's a title. He's the adversary. Just like the devil. Let's look up a devil, because the devil is the accuser. Let's just get an example here. Practice sin is of the devil. Let's go see what the devil reads. It's of the devil, which is diabolo, which is the slanderer, the accuser, slanderer. So that's what the devil means. But let's look up Lucifer here, because really Lucifer is also not a name. It is a here, let me see. Give me a second to get this looked up. Okay, forgive me. So I just did a word search of Lucifer. And you notice how, looking up Lucifer, we get one version. It's Isaiah 14:12. How have you fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn? You have been. Let's go see what it says here. But really, you'll see Isaiah 14 where they're talking about that. There's only one version. See if I can find it here, that I have found where it actually uses the name Lucifer. Like here is the NIV. It's not Lucifer, it's morning star, son of the dawn. Descriptions. New Living Translation is, oh, shining star, son of the morning. Descriptions. English version, oh, day star, son of dawn. Descriptions. Here's Lucifer, King James, and this is where we see Lucifer. But what is Lucifer? Lucifer is, let me see if I can get this. Well, here, let me just go there. We'll go to the King James Version of the Bible, and let's go to that would be Hebrew. So let's go find where they are looking at the term Lucifer. Give me a second. Okay, and so I don't know. If this isn't the King James, then we have another one showing us Lucifer here. Maybe it's the parallel version. I don't know. But here's what they're translating as Lucifer, and it's this Hebrew word Hallel, which you'll see in some of us, like in the version I read, which is the Yah scriptures or the Hallelujah scriptures. They use the term Hallel because that's the Hebrew word for it. But really, all that means is morning star, shining one, or Lucifer in some translations. So Lucifer is the morning star. So neither Lucifer nor Satan nor the devil are the names of this enemy that we have. It's not the name of the God of this world. And if those are not the names of the God of this world, but rather titles or descriptions of his roles and the descriptions of him, then what would his name be? Well, I'm not claiming to know all of them, but I'm getting ready to show you Azazel and Mastema here for your consideration. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not looking to teach anybody names of the enemy, but Satan, Lucifer, and the devil are not it. I mean, it's fine to refer to them as that, but just for reference sake, Azazel appears to be, if not the name of the great Satan, the main guy, he's certainly a candidate for it. He appears in Hanok, and if you can, it appears first in Azazel. Up here, I did a word search of him. We have 9 occurrences where Azazel appears, and this is in Enoch or Hanok. In chapter 7, this is during the time where the messengers have come down, and this is chapter 6 is where they're introducing the messengers. The messengers, the children of the Shemaim, saw and lusted after them and said to one another, "Come, let us choose for wives among ourselves." And then Shimyatsa, who was their leader, said to them, "I fear," etc. Then they go on to list all of them. Here's Shimlatsats was their leader. I'm not going to try and pronounce all these names right now. I've done it in the past. I'm thinking that it is possible that this Asashel may also be a variant of Azazel because it gets listed. So it's possible Azazel was one of these watchers, but it's also possible that he was separate from these, because if you were to read, and it's not my purpose here, if you were to read Hanok, you would see what all they did wrong with the children of men and how they led the children of men astray. But Azazel got special treatment here. And in chapter 8, verse 1, it says, "And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the adorning of eyelids," etc. So he's introduced there as teaching them wickedness and problems, things that they were not meant to have learned. And then we go on to see we're in 9 now, where it says, "You see what Azazel has done, who has taught all unrighteousness on earth and revealed the eternal secrets which were in the Shemaim, which men were striving to learn." And then we see again where Raphael, one of the archangels, was told to bind by Yahuwah, told to bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into darkness and make an opening in the desert, which is in Judea, and cast him in there. Now, this timing is, here's Noah up here, but as I've been reading this, I'm wondering if this binding of Azazel isn't the binding that takes place at the end of time, after we had the Antichrist war and before the 1,000-year period of time, where an angel grasped that devil, Satan of old, and cast him into the pit. I think this might be that time, because they place him in there and place on him rough and jagged rocks and cover him with darkness and let him abide there forever and cover his face that he may not see light. And on the day of great judgment, he shall be cast into the fire. So I don't know this for a fact, but this could be related to, this Azazel could be the devil, the Satan, who is cast into the pit, bottomless pit, awaiting to be released for that short period of time. But here they're saying that the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel, and to him were ascribed all of sin. Hanak went and said, Azazel, you shall have no peace. A severe sentence has gone forth against you. I'm in Enoch 13 now. A severe sentence has gone forth against you to put you in bonds. And you shall not have toleration or request granted to you because of the unrighteousness which you have taught, and because of all the works of wickedness and unrighteousness and sin which you have shown to men. Let's see. Here's chapter 54. And then he said to me, these are being prepared for the host of Azazel. Okay, so what's being prepared? And I looked and turned another part of earth and saw there a deep valley with burning fire, and they brought the sovereigns and the mighty and began to cast them into this deep valley. And there my eyes saw how they made these their instruments, iron chains of immeasurable weight. And I asked the messenger of peace who went with me, saying, for whom are these chains being prepared? And he said to me, these are being prepared for the host of Azazel, like the host of Satan, maybe, so that they may take them and cast them into the abyss of complete condemnation, and they shall cover their jaws with rough stones, as Yahuwah of hosts commanded. Let's see what the other three. There's another. This is the seventh occurrence. You mighty sovereigns who dwell on the earth, you shall have to look upon my elect one, which is Yahushua, how he sits on the throne of esteem and judges Azazel and all of his associates and all the hosts in the name of Yahuwah of hosts. So there is Azazel being judged as Satan will be judged in the end times, as the devil will. And here we have, this is why I was saying that maybe when I was listing off the messengers, that it's possible that Asasiel was also a variant of Azazel and maybe one of the messengers. So it could be that Azazel, Satan, is actually one of the messengers. Maybe. I don't really know for sure. But here he is listed as the 10th, and then also listed as the 21st of the messengers who had come down during those times. And so then that was the last of those Azazels. Now let me go show you Azazel in the scriptures, the book of 66. Okay, let me first show you in the Yah scriptures, just so you can kind of see that they don't really try to replace the word Azazel. They leave Azazel in here. So here we are in Leviticus 16, and the instructions are to Aaron, and it has to do with a scapegoat. We more commonly think of this as a scapegoat, because I'll show you in a second, that's what the King James uses. But here, Aaron shall cast lots for the two goats. One lot for Yahuwah and the other for Azazel. And then goes on to say, but the goat on which the lot for Azazel fell is caused to stand alive before Yahuwah to make atonement upon him, to send it into the wilderness to Azazel. So here is Azazel as for Azazel. So this is a scapegoat for Azazel, and it's being sent to the wilderness to Azazel. Now let's go look. Well, here, let me finish, because there's only one more occurrence of Azazel. Let's see where else it shows up. So this is Leviticus. Is this still Leviticus? Okay, it's still in the same chapter of 16 where we see Azazel, and he who sent away the goat to Azazel. Once again, we're seeing that the scapegoat was for Azazel, and it was sent to Azazel. Now let's go see what the King James Version says in these same passages. Here's 16, and here's verse 8 that we were just reading. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the two goats, one lot for the Lord, and the other lot for the scapegoat. Okay, down here, though, we've got an asterisk, and down here they're showing us that In Hebrew, it's Azazel. Let's quickly, I'm going to pause it for just a second. Let's go to the Hebrew. Well, no, I'll tell you what, let's finish reading this and then we'll go to the Hebrew of this. Because in verse 8, the scapegoat, and Aaron shall bring upon the goat upon which the Lord's lot fell and offer him for a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell to be the scapegoat shall be presented alive before the Lord to make atonement with him, and let him go for a scapegoat into the wilderness. Now, what we just read was the goat was for Azazel, and now up here in 8 it's saying lot for the scapegoat. So instead of saying for Azazel, it's saying for the scapegoat. But here they're again telling us Azazel. And then it goes on to say that it's going to let him go for a scapegoat into the wilderness. But in chapter 10 here, it was in verse 8, it was the other lot for Azazel. And then in verse 10, it was lot for Azazel. And then the goat is sent into the wilderness to Azazel. Let's go see. Okay, so here is, this is the NASB. And here in Leviticus 16:8, Aaron shall cast two lots for the two goats, one lot for the Lord and the other for the scapegoat again. And then Aaron shall offer the goat on which the lot fell, for the Lord fell, and make it a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot for the scapegoat, So they're calling this scapegoat Azazel, to make atonement for, to send it into the wilderness as the scapegoat. All right, let's go see what it reads, how it reads in Hebrew. Okay, so here is Leviticus 16:8 in the Hebrew, and here is where in English, in the various translations that I was just reading from the NASB and the King James, they're wanting to use the word scapegoat, but in Hebrew it's La Azazel, and if we go look at that, it is Azazel. They've got Azazel here, which is not capitalized as though it is just a title, like a name, the scapegoat. But then we also have the capitalized Azazel here. And down here they're saying the goat of departure or the scapegoat. I don't really know if they're going to show down here the name again. Doesn't really matter. I'm just offering it as a potential name of Satan, his real name. Satan not being his name, but maybe Azazel, maybe Mastema, maybe Azazel is actually just a title as well. But in Enoch, it sure appears that Azazel is the name of this entity that's going to be judged and cast into the pit. Sure looks like it. Let's go look at the other option for a name, and that is Mastema. Let me go back to the beginning of Mastema. Let's see how many times it's introduced. So here's Mastema, and I'm in the book of Jubilees. Now, this is called Yobelum. Let's see if it says Jubilees here. Yeah, it says Jubilees here too. Let me see if I can also make this larger for everybody. Actually read along with me. But here's Mastema, and the first time we see it introduced in Jubilees. But it says, and the chief of the spirits, Mastema. What does that mean? Is that the leader of all the spirits? Is that the head guy? Is that the main guy? Is Mastema even over Azazel? I don't really know. Could be Mastema is the name of Satan. Could be Azazel is. Maybe Mastema is the chief and Azazel is part of his crowd. But anyways, he's introduced to us in Jubilees here. And what chapter is this? This is chapter 10, verse 8. And the chief of the spirits, Mastema, came and said, Adonai, Creator, let some of them remain before me, and let them listen to my voice, and do all that I shall say to them. For if some of them are not left to me, I shall not be able to execute the power of my purpose on the sons of men, for these are for corruption and leading astray before my right ruling, for the wickedness of the sons of men is great. So Mastema is asking Adonai not to lock up everybody, to bind them all, because here's the command. Just like we saw in Enoch, we're going to see that after the watchers do what they need to do, they need to be, and you know how your watchers, the fathers of these spirits, acted in my day. And as for these spirits which are living, imprison them and hold them fast in the place of condemnation, and let them not bring destruction on the sons of your servant, my Elohim. Not let them bring destruction on the sons of your servant, my Elohim. For these are evil, created in order to destroy. And let them not rule over the spirits of the living, for you alone exercise rule over them, and let them not have power over the sons of the righteous from this time and forever. And Yahuwah our Elohim commanded us to bind them all. So these are the angels. These are like the archangels. This is Raphael. This is Michael. This is Gabriel. These are the big guys. These are the big, of which Mastema is probably amongst them in terms of size and power and ability. Or we've always thought of Lucifer or Satan, those that we've called Lucifer and Satan, always to be one of what? The archangels. That's what the church has taught us, so that we know he's a very powerful being, but he's a fallen, powerful being. But clearly, some of the watchers are currently locked up, and that we hear Peter referring to them in the new writings, that some of them are already locked up, but not all of them are. And apparently, Mastema is not yet locked up. And he asked Adonai, here, don't lock them all up, because here's the command from Yahuwah, our Elohim commanded us, Raphael and Michael and Gabriel, whoever it was up here that was charged with this. And the command was to go lock them all up. But then Mastema came in to Adonai, the Yahuwah, as the creator, let some of them remain. So some of them got to remain at the request of Mastema, who was the chief of the spirits. So here we have Mastema being introduced and asking for 10% of all the bad watchers and angels that ultimately fell out from heaven, fell from grace, and fell from Yahuwah. So let's go look at the rest of, we have 12 occurrences of Mastema. Let's go look at some of the others. Here we have the prince Mastema exerted himself to do all this. I'm not trying to make a study of Mastema. I'm just trying to introduce a name here. So molded images, they're talking about molded images, and the prince exerted himself to do all this, and he sent out other spirits, those who were put under his hand to do all kinds of evil and sin. Okay, sounds like the Satan we know. And the prince Mastema sent ravens and birds to devour the seed which was sown in the land, in order to destroy the land and rob the children of men of their labors. I think this was in the days of Abraham. Here the prince Mastema came and said before Elohim, see, Abraham loves Yitzchak his son, and he delights in him above all other matters. This is a Job event here. Mastema, Satan, the accuser. Satan, the adversary of Job. In fact, in Job it says, ha Satan, thou Satan. At least in my scriptures it reads that way. But you will see ho Satan. So the adversary, the accuser, the devil, came breathing out lies to Yahuwah relating to Job, but he did the same thing to Abraham, saying, Mastema, see, Abraham loves Yitzchak and delights in him. Basically accuses Abraham before Yahuwah as well. And I'm not going to go into it all because it's another study. It's wonderful, but Abraham passed those tests just like Job did. Let's move on to the next. And I stood before him and before the prince of Mastema. Okay, so this sounds like it's not the prince Mastema, but the prince of Mastema. And Yahuwah said, command him not to lay his hand on the lad to do any matter to him, for I have shown that he reveres Yahuwah. So this is actually still the account of Abraham, and it appears before the prince of Mastema. So it looked like there was somebody there who represented Mastema at the same time. Doesn't really matter. Let's move on. The prince of Mastema was put to shame, and Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, in a single ram. So there's still the story of Mastema and Abraham. And the spirits of Mastema shall not rule over you or over your seed, or over your seed, to turn you from Yahuwah, who is your Elohim from this time forward and forever. So we're talking about Mastema and Yaakov. This is the out of the way here. And all the words of which you told me, and all the matters which you promised to give me, may cause to cling to you and to your seed forever, according to the days of the Shemaim. I believe he's talking about Yaakov, my beloved son. So the spirits of Mastema, which would appear to be the demons, well, actually they're not demons, I think, but the angels, those under the control of Mastema, would not be able to rule over the sons of Yaakov. Let's move on to the next. Here, know what you spoke to Mount Sinai, and what Prince Mastema desired to do with you when you were returning from Mitzrayim on the way, when you met him at the lodging place. Here's Mastema named again, this time as Prince Mastema, not the Prince of Mastema. Here we are in another version. But despite all signs and wonders, the prince of Mastema was not put to shame, because he strengthened himself and cried to the Mitzrites. So here's the Prince of Mastema. not necessarily the prince Mastema. Keep on moving on. For this night, the beginning of the festival and the beginning of joy to you. For you were eating the Pesach Mitzrayim when the powers of Mastema had been let loose to slay all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim. Now, this is very interesting. It's always been very interesting because we've always understood that when the angel of the, we've always understood in the book of 66 that when the firstborn of Egypt were killed, they were killed by the angel of the Lord. So that's all we've really understood. But here in Jubilees, it's suggesting that on the night, it's the powers of Mastema let loose to slay the firstborn of Mitzrayim. So it wasn't literally Yahuwah or his angels like a Gabriel or a Michael or even his spirit or it is not, it's the powers of Satan, the adversary, Mastema, who had been let loose to slay the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim. One more occurrence here. And on the 14th day, and on the 15th day, on the 16th day, on the 7th day, and on the 18th day, the prince of Mastema was bound and imprisoned behind the children of Israel that he might not accuse them. So what was this about? Between the Mitzrayites and Israel, and we delivered Israel out of his hand and out of the hand of his people. And Yahuwah brought them through the midst of the sea as if it were a dry land, and all the people who went after them. Depths, he took vengeance. So I won't keep beating it to death. I would just be offering up Mastema as a potential name of Satan. So Satan, the adversary, is the god of this world. Is the adversary, is Satan, not being his name, is Satan's name Mastema or Azazel? Maybe. I don't really know. But no matter how you spell it all out, our adversary, the Satan, the devil, the Lucifer, the morning star, let me quickly go shoot. So here is Lucifer in the KJV. This is why we all think of Satan as Lucifer, as though Lucifer is his name, because of how the King James has given it to us. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut to the ground? Let's see if they make any comments about that. Here it is. 14:12, O Lucifer, or O day star. So Lucifer is the only version that I have found. There might be a few others, but all the main ones I don't see. We see some sort of version of day star, morning star, something of that nature, a description of this being that fell from heaven, which is what Mastema has done. It's what the Watchers have done. They have fallen from heaven. Okay, so I failed to keep it short one more time. It ended up being an hour long. I never wanted it to be that way necessarily, but I don't really know how to get all these points in without it taking a little time. But my real point to you, if you are still with me and still listening, is that our Satan, our adversary, the Lucifer, the devil, is roaring about to see whom he can devour, deceiving, leading the whole world astray. And if we as the church are not careful, he's also leading us astray because he has infiltrated the church back way in the beginning. And so much of the doctrines that are being taught through our seminaries and different, they're errant doctrines. You need to begin testing them against what is really written in scriptures and what is really taught, because so many of the things, I mean, really, that's another whole study. There are so many things that, first of all, I will tell you, they have led us into following the wrong days. They're not days that the Yahuwah can embrace as celebrations. Christmas, Easter, these have nothing to do with him. He has his Moedim. He's given us the Moedim, they're what we should be observing if we're trying to follow him, because they have meaning to him. And the things that the church has given us has no meaning to him, no prescribed meanings. The Sabbath that they tell us has been moved to the first day, no. And if you really start studying how important it is to Yahuwah that we observe the Sabbath, it's not a game, it's the fourth command. And to move it around and to take it lightly is a bit of a problem. I would tell you, we were never, the food items that we have taken and the church has told us it's okay, Yahuwah, it's anathema to him. It's terrible. It is not. He does not want us eating those food items, never did, and he never gave us permission to eat those things as the church has. So we're eating things that Yahuwah has told us not to. These are some of the important things that we're doing, probably the major important things. I don't know. There's more. But I am saying, know that you are being deceived. If you are not careful, if you are not observing and testing everything that you are doing, and not against necessarily just the doctrines of the church, but the teachings of Israel, you are subject to the deception of Lucifer, who is the God of this world. I will end it here. Thank you for your time if you survived with me this long.